Want to know how not to get scammed? Keep watching.
Come on, all you doggies, won't you walk with me? I'm the puppet dog.
Hi there, this is Angelo Webb, the Animal Intuitive, and thank you for everyone who's watching. Today I'm going to be talking about a very important topic, which is how not to get scammed by an animal communicator. I do want to mention it is Memorial Day weekend, and I want to take a moment just to pay some respects to those humans and animals who have served and lost their lives in service. So I want to just start out by saying welcome to everyone in the chat. This is a show where we have dialogue, so feel free to ask questions. I'm gonna, keep track. We have someone who's doing some moderating in the chat, which is my husband. So we can always, have a dialogue. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. I just ask that people be polite and, we have a nice community here, and let's just keep it that way. So let me just see who is in the chat real quick. Good night, Owl. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, you're hungry. Oh, good. So you're taking your rabbit's carrots. That's healthy. Good for you. That's good stuff. So thank you so much for being here. And I've missed everyone too. I've missed being here. I did get a lot of work done. So I'm happy to say that. I took some classes that were some great continuing ed classes. Just to explain what I do, I'm a professional animal communicator. And I also am certified in animal massage and acupressure. For those of you who are not familiar with what all that is, there is a board for that here in the United States, and we have to keep up our continuing ed credits. And I run a business. I have private clients and teaching, so I needed to take some time here and there just to get that continuing ed stuff done. And it was great to be doing some learning. It was a lot of fun, and it's always refreshing. So I want to also mention that anything I say in these videos is for educational and entertainment purposes. I am not a veterinarian. I am an animal communicator, which means that I understand what animals are thinking and feeling. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades professionally. And, I also am a licensed clinical social worker. So I mention that because I'm going to be talking a little bit today about narcissism. And I just want to mention that I am not diagnosing anybody with narcissism. And I am not here to explain how to diagnose anyone. I don't want anyone to use this information to go diagnosing people or calling people a narcissist. It's just that some of these traits that we find in narcissism, to some degree, can be found. I just realized that my good mic has not been on this whole time. So I apologize for the sound. Probably wasn't very good there for a moment. Let me just make sure that we are good with the audio. Hold on, I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, I know the audio was probably really bad there in the start, so I apologize for that, and hopefully we are back on track here. Yeah, my computer mic is not very good. So, good, we got that. Good, thank you. Good night, Owl. Hopefully that's better. So I did want to mention, I don't know where I was there, but I do not diagnose anyone here on the show. I'm not here to do that or, have anyone else use this information for that purpose. And I am not a veterinarian, so I don't diagnose or treat illness either in animals. Wanted to mention that too. And I think that's pretty much it as far as those things go. And just did want to mention narcissism is extremely rare. It's only about 1 to 6% of the population they estimate that has true narcissism. So once again, some of the things I'm going to be talking about today more have to do with just traits of narcissism, which many of us have anyway at various times in our lives. We can be a little bit more or less narcissistic. We all have a little bit of it in us. So I am trying to just bring something up here. I'm sorry. Having a little bit of tech stuff as usual. All right, well, that's not coming up. So anybody who has dealt with difficult situations having to do with, whatever, I know that this topic it's about animal communication. I don't give us the label of psychics. Psychics to me is kind of a different thing. However, we do kind of get caught up in the same lingo sometimes. And I just want to mention, that it's not the same thing, but some of this probably really could be applied as a warning for some things that other people might be dealing with that in that realm too. So I'm sort of messing around a little bit, trying to get my stuff up here because I got when I brought the mic up, I lost something for a second, but I'm going to be fine here. We got it. 1 second. I swear, don't go anywhere. And also, I am doing live animal communication during this. If people want to hang around for that, I will be doing that. I will be doing it after I talk about all this. And I'm probably going to limit it to probably one person today if anybody's here who wants that. My energy just gets a little drained, so I just want to be careful about that. All right. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is something called what I call stringing. So, yeah, narcissism has increased, I think, in recent years. Just, I don't know that it's full blown, but it's, because of social media, I absolutely agree with you. Or is social media bringing them out of the woodwork? I would think that it does draw people out of the woodwork who have those traits. And it's hard to say which has it actually increased. I'm not sure what the studies say on that. I'm not sure about that. I think my thinking is it's probably encouraging traits of narcissism, and I'm going to talk about some of those here. So stringing to me is like you're the never-ending client. This is the first thing I want to talk about. So this would be like making it seem like you need that animal communicator, rather than reinforcing your own intuition and just supporting your own ability to know and understand your pet. So as an animal communicator, I'm there to understand what your animal's thinking and feeling. And, if you're having problems with various issues, we can support you in that. And part of our job sort of is to help point you in the direction where you could be picking these things up or identifying where you have already picked them up and maybe haven't recognized it. So I teach, and so many people I find when I'm teaching, like instantly, I don't even know if I've ever had a student, I think I've said this before, I don't think I've ever had anybody not be able to identify very early on when we start showing them, how to identify animal communication and what it feels like, and how it manifests or how you're doing it. I don't think I've ever had a student not be able to identify a time when they have communicated with an animal. So to me, this is something that we all are born with. We don't necessarily have, the encouragement to bring it out. It's just not something in our society. It's not really taught in schools. I guess. I don't think it is at this point. Not that I'm aware of. So I kind of doubt it. And so it kind of gets, swept under the carpet, or it's just not encouraged. And like any muscle that you don't exercise, it atrophies. But it's still there. And, if you identify it yourself, that's great. But a lot of people just don't realize they're doing it. And so they become interested in it. They think, oh, that sounds neat. And they maybe take a class or come watch a show like this. And they're able to see where they have already been doing it. We want to help you as an animal communicator to identify that. We have a code of ethics, and I'm going to talk more about that. And that's part of that. So we want to also provide organic or natural, or there should be organic or natural boundaries regarding sessions going forward after an initial session, an initial animal communication consultation. So, it's just sort of like you're in a vulnerable place, let's say. You have an animal who's sick or has major behavioral issues, and you come to us for a better understanding of what's going on, and for some support and clarity around the issue. And organically, you should probably be walking around or walking away from that first appointment having gained some insight. And then maybe you make some changes, or some things you do differently, or you find something that maybe I intuitively picked up in an appointment that could help your pet. You try that, it helps, and then maybe some time goes by and you realize, wow, this changed things, but there's still this little piece that needs some adjusting. Or now I want to better understand their point of view on this. That's kind of an organic flow. But if an animal communicator wants to hook you into many repeated sessions and gives you the sense that if you don't continue to come to see them, things aren't going to get better, or pushes you into purchasing additional sessions when you're not comfortable with it. It's one thing. We are business people. I have packages. I have, it's like a discount thing with 3 packages or 3 appointments instead of just getting 1. You get a discount. That's very common, and I think that's appropriate, because sometimes people will say, my pet's getting older, and things are shifting, more frequently in their health, and we're kind of trying to adjust to our feelings about it and how to make them more comfortable. And once again, we're not diagnosing or treating illness, but I even have vets refer to me, because sometimes a veterinarian, can do so much, and then they get to a point where they're for instance, I've had situations where the veterinarian couldn't figure out what the problem was. I've talked about this in other videos, but they had a problem, and the vet gets to the end of their testing. They just don't know what else could possibly be going on. So someone comes to me to do some medical intuitive work and to understand really from the animal's perspective what might be going on, and also how they're feeling about the situation. So sometimes people can kind of see, well, maybe I'm going to want to be doing this a little bit more frequently in the next few months or so, or the next year, so I'll take advantage of a discount. But you don't want somebody who's an animal communicator to be pushing you and saying, let's meet every week. I think that would be good for you. Or every other week. Or I think we should be meeting every month. If you really want to make advancements in your pet, you want to see things really get better, I think you really need to. No, it shouldn't be like that. Hi, Tammy. Nice to see you. We need to, make sure that we have those boundaries. Okay, so this kind of gets into where I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole narcissism, diagnosis and that kind of a thing, and the traits and things like that. So there's just these different qualities that come along with narcissism. And there's kind of the umbrella, what is narcissism? So I'm going to actually just read straight from a page for that, because I don't have it memorized. I wish I had the memory, but I don't do that. So I have all the subsections written out, but I lost my page. This always happens. You have everything set up, and then you get on here and it's gone. I'm sorry to see that your little lady just had the other half of her mastectomy done. This one is hard. I'm so sorry that you are going through that. I know this must be a really, really difficult time for you, and just want to ask everyone, to keep you in your prayers, keep Lady in your prayers, in their prayers, and I will keep her in mind too. So, sorry, I'm going to be right there. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. Got it right here. You're welcome. Absolutely. We like to support people here. We know we're all animal lovers, and we've all been through many of us have been through very difficult things, so we understand here. All right, so in the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic and statistical manual, narcissist, which is where the definitions are of all these different personalities or mental health issues. Narcissistic personality disorder is defined as compromising a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. It begins in early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts. And then there's 5 out of 9 criteria. So I'm going to talk about a few of the main ones that I see come up sometimes when we're dealing with people in the animal communication or other, worlds of the psychic realms, if you want to call it that. And I just want to reiterate, I haven't said this actually. Most animal communicators get into this because they want to help you and they want to help your pet. So I'm definitely not putting down animal communicators in general or any specific, I'm not trying to put down any specific animal communicator. I'm not referring to any specific animal communicator. I'm just giving examples of things I've run into here and there and have heard about. So these are just things to help keep you protected and safe, and things to keep you alert and aware of, because when you're in a vulnerable position with your pet, sometimes it helps to, just be a little bit more aware of how you might be taken advantage of. And, don't go into these things thinking I'm going to get taken advantage of. If you found an animal communicator, you've been referred to one who somebody says is great and they trust them and they're wonderful, I would probably go in not being too concerned about it. But this is just so you know what those red flags are should they come up. So again, this is superficial and exploitative relationships. That is one of the DSM, one of the traits. So relationships are based on surface attributes and not the unique qualities of others. And people are only valued to the extent that they're viewed as beneficial. So that would be where somebody who's an animal communicator or otherwise would be, you can use this in any business actually. Think about this. If you're looking to invest in something. So if you get the feeling that somebody is basically not concerned about you as a person or your animal, it's more about, they're acting like you have a relationship and they're acting on the surface like they're concerned, but you just get the feeling that it's more about the money and it's more about them gaining something from you. So as I mentioned, you may start to pick those things up if someone's pushing packages more than is, should be reasonable, more than seems necessary. That's just an example. A lack of empathy. So severely limited or totally lacking ability to care about the emotional needs or experiences of others, even loved ones. If someone is severely limited or totally lacking the ability to care about the emotional needs or experience of others, they really don't belong in animal communication. You probably, again, this is a rare, full, people really having this disorder, and you don't have to have all of these qualities, but you're probably not going to see this. It would be very difficult to do this. However, there's people who could. There's people who are going to take advantage of people and maybe completely lacking in empathy and found this is a way to do it. So yes, definitely. That's kind of the crux of this. Listen to your intuition. If it doesn't feel right, walk away. That's a great suggestion. I agree with you. So the next topic I want to talk about is sort of a subset of stringing. So it's when somebody kind of starts to act in a domineering kind of a way, but sometimes this can be really subtle. When you are in a vulnerable situation, there are people who have those personalities that are sort of like, they're really outgoing or forceful personalities, but sometimes that can actually feel good when you're kind of lost and confused and not sure what to do. There's people that you that have those personalities that people will gravitate to because it's like, oh, you have the answer. So let me just tell you, that's kind of like the not my style at all. But there are animal communicators that are a little bit more not having narcissism or but it's a little bit more their style. But this is when it gets to be more extreme. So you gravitate who you're going to gravitate towards, and you go with who your gut tells you is the right person for you. But it's when somebody, really is acting like they're kind of taking liberties. So for instance, they may say things like, you need to do this for your pet. If you don't listen to me, I don't know what to tell you, because if he's still having these issues and I've told you to do this, then of course, he's going to have problems. Of course, things aren't going to work out. You're not listening to me. I've told you what to do. Those sort of like more forceful, we're not really supposed to be in that role. We speak with your pet, and we are supposed to be picking up on what we pick up on and presenting that information to you, and for you to take that information as you will, to see what feels right to you, and to, do with that information what you want and what feels right for you and your pet. So people like this in the extreme, you would be seeing, this is a characteristic of identity disturbance. So this would be a sense of self is highly superficial, extremely rigid. They can actually be kind of fragile underneath. You might not see it at first, but their stability in their sense of their self depends on maintaining this viewpoint that they're exceptional. There's a grandiose sense of self, and it can be easily threatened. So if you disagree with them and they come back at you really forcefully, like, you're wrong, this is what I said to do, or I can't believe that you don't understand this. What's the matter with you? You just don't get it. You're not. They kind of put you down a little subtly, like making you feel like, why don't you get that this is the way to go? And this can come in for things, there's a lot of things in the holistic world, for instance, that animal communicators gravitate towards. This whole show for me is about like trying to bring education about alternative ways to help your pet, things that can empower you to help your pet holistically. So I have holistic vets on, I find people who do those kinds of things in different ways. It's how I try to that's how I try to help my animals. I go to a holistic veterinarian, but I work as a team with that. So I'm just as likely to recommend somebody else who can be a part of that team. And I don't think that it's just me as an animal communicator. I'm giving you this information and that's all you need and that's it. And I don't believe that just because I tell you that I'm intuiting that this particular thing is going to help your pet, that if you don't do it because you have something about it that you don't want to use it for whatever reason, that's the wrong decision. I'm going to encourage you to go with what feels right to you. So, and also, having difficulty with attachment and dependency, that's more about, of course, relationships. And this is more of a business relationship, but somebody who has issues with that could be using relationships just to kind of make themselves feel good about themselves. It's about kind of, they say, shoring up positive self-image. That's how it's described. Interactions are superficial, and you can usually pick up on these things. So just listen to your gut, as was said in the chat, and I want to reiterate that too. Also, a lack of empathy. So people that are like that can have a lack of empathy, and you need that in this field so much. I mean, that's a huge part of being an animal communicator, is your empathy. And, you need to make sure that you're really intuiting and feeling, what do I need to focus on? What is this person needing me to do right now? It's a lot of listening skills in order to do animal communication. And you need to be not focused on what's going to make you feel good about yourself, or it's got to be focused on how you are helping your client. So a kind of another subset of this that I just want to mention is teaching. This comes more into play with teaching. I want to just talk very quickly about spiritual abuse, and that's the kind of abuse that comes from somebody who's sort of a spiritual leader. And now, just want to say, I don't see myself as a spiritual leader. However, in this field, you can kind of get into that territory where, you know, if I sort of have, like, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm going to share that information in a teaching environment. I know that when I was a little animal communicator, like when I started out, there were certain people that I sort of held in high esteem, that people that were around a really long time. It was a much smaller pool when I started, much, much smaller, actually. That's why I'm also doing the show, because there's so many animal communicators out there now. It's unbelievable. Now they're like everywhere. And so I don't know what the quality is because there's so many. It could be that there's enough teachers to go around and give people good education, but I have no idea. I just know that when I started, I was able to get great teaching from a small pool that you could know for sure were really good. So that's why I'm doing this for you, so that you can have some information, some things I've learned from being in the field. But anyway, so if you begin to see people as sort of a leader and they take advantage of that, of course, there's going to be a little bit of a different, dynamic when somebody's been doing something for a while, you're learning from them, that's okay to have respect for them and what they do. You probably want to have respect for them and what they do if you're going to be paying them money and taking classes from them and learning from them. But if you begin to sense that that person's taking advantage of the situation, maybe making you feel ashamed for thinking differently, I kind of, I got some of this information from a site called goodtherapy.org that you might want to take a look at if you want more information on spiritual abuse. I'm not going to go all into it, but if you're being made to feel like you are less than in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable or feel bad about yourself, and if they don't treat you with respect, obviously in any situation, if you're not being treated with respect, then you need to take a second look at the situation and see if this is the right person for you. Make sure that your individuality is appreciated and welcomed. So being in a class situation with a teacher who wants you to be modeling everything just like them, that's not the situation that's going to be very advantageous for you growing as an animal communicator. You're going to be kind of squashed if you're trying to just mimic what someone else does. Part of what I do as a teacher is I try to draw out of you, what are your unique abilities as an animal communicator? What do you bring to the table that's different? Because everybody does. We all come from different backgrounds and fields. We have different personalities and characteristics, and that's what makes us unique. And so that's you have to focus on your positive attributes. So just being mindful of that you don't feel uncomfortable by a teacher, you don't feel exploited, and they're not trying to pull money from you all the time again. They're not trying to like hook you, here's my information, this is what I do, I feel it can help you. I have levels, just like many people in my classes, where we go from like an intro up to the next level to, becoming an animal communicator. And you're, normally presenting that information and not forceful about it, and not saying like, if you really want to get anywhere and be good in this field, you better study with me, and, let's go, let's do the next class. Right after this is, you have to figure out what your pacing is and what works for you financially. Don't ever feel pressured to be paying for stuff that you're not feeling comfortable with paying for. Sometimes there's like this mentality. Sometimes I think, especially with the whole manifesting and all of that, which I have issue with. Personally, I'm not going to go too far into that right now, but I have personal feelings about that you really have to be careful with that stuff. A lot of this is hard work. It's not just like believing it and it will be. But people sometimes take advantage of that outlook to say like, well, you just have to trust. If you put all your money into this, it'll work out and you'll make money back. Well, you may not. You may, but you may not. So you really have to be, your own adult and decide if it's the right thing for you to do at that time, financially speaking. So just to go a little bit more into like the Code of Ethics, which was developed by Penelope Smith, who's somebody I actually did some training with early on. She wrote a Code of Ethics, I believe it was in 1990, or at least that was the last version that came out. And I'm not going to read through the whole Code of Ethics. It's kind of long, but animal communicators go by these Code of Ethics, or we should. And pieces of it I'm just going to mention. So we seek to draw out the best in everyone and increase understanding towards mutual resolution of problems. We cultivate an ability in others rather than dependence on our ability. We offer people ways to be involved in understanding and growth with their fellow beings. And of other species. I kind of cut part of that off. I think it's fellow beings of other species. And we acknowledge our limitations, seeking help from other professionals as needed. It's not our job to name and treat diseases, and we refer people to veterinarians for diagnosis of physical illness. We relay animals' ideas, feelings, pain, symptoms as they describe them, or as we feel we perceive them, and this may be helpful to veterinary health professionals. We may also assist through handling of stresses, counseling, and other gentle healing methods. We let clients decide for themselves how to work with healing their animal companions' distress, disease, injury, given all the information available. So one thing I want to mention from that, that's in my, I'll get to that, hold on. So topic 2, I want to talk about making extraordinary claims. The first part of this, telling you that they can predict the future. So I know that there's some like people out there who will say that they can tell you what's going to happen in your future. Saying for sure that that X, Y, Z is going to happen in someone's life. If they do this, this is what's going to happen. Or, this is your life course. This is what's going to end up happening to you. Okay, maybe there are some out there, I haven't met them, that are able to do that. And I used to do these things when I was younger. I used to go to people who claimed to be able to do these things. It never unfolded in that way. And I think that, one thing to keep in mind about that is not that some people do not have some level of ability to do something like that. I hate pronouncing this. It's prescience, or ability to kind of know what's going to happen in the future. Sometimes that happens with me. I had it happen very recently where I knew, I got the sense that something that should have been resolved a long time ago, kind of a bureaucratic thing, should have been done a long time ago, and logically you would have thought it would have been. But I knew when I sat down, and, I incorporate prayer into my life all the time. As a Christian, that's just part of what I do. So I can't tell you if this was God just trying to say to me, like, look, slow down. Just be patient. This isn't going to happen right when you think it is. Or if it was my own intuition. And sometimes I don't think that we 100% know the difference. When we're turning to God in prayer, we don't always know what it's one of those things that's sort of a little bit of a question, but I knew that it was going to be June. And this was back in like April. It was like June. I just knew. It was like, to me, when you know something like that, it's like setting a stone on a table. There's just like, yep. And I didn't want to hear that, but it was like, that's what it is. It felt solid to me. So there's things like that do happen. And I've had things like that happen in consultations that I do for people. However, anything that I say, I also know could change. So it's like at this moment in time, this is the outcome I'm feeling is going to happen if you go in this direction or if you stay in this course. This is the outcome that I'm feeling is going to happen. I think that that's the most likely thing that you're going to have music playing in the background this whole time. I just really hope I don't get some weird copyright thing from that. It's very low, but so I wouldn't say that somebody, depending on how it's presented to you, you know, if you, like I've had things happen in a session where somebody says to me, I'll be talking to an animal and they'll say, what, you know, how's he doing? What does he want? And sometimes I will get an image of another animal and I'll tell the person what that animal looks like, feels like, maybe the gender or what, you know, and they'll say to me, we've been thinking about getting another pet actually. Do you think that's what this is? And I'll say, well, it certainly looks like it. This is what I'm feeling is coming in. He feels, you know, the feeling is happy, like he wants another dog to play with, for instance. And, you know, that happens. They come back to me in 6 months or 3 months and say, we've found this dog. I just want to show you the picture. It's like, you know, these certain things are kind of like what you mentioned. It could be the color of the fur. It could be the way they act. It could be how it happened, how they came to them. But for me, just to say, you're going to be getting another dog, I know that 100%. That's what's going to happen. And kind of be hard and fast about it. Well, I don't know. I think that that's something that we need to be wary of. And also intuition, it's not being psychic. It's not predicting the future. You don't know exactly what's going to happen if you stay on the trajectory that you're on. It's feeling more likely that it's going to happen. But things can change that. So like it's that butterfly effect thing. So saying your intuition should be used as a guide, not a magic looking glass. I think that's a very good way to put that. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so now going back to what I was going to mention earlier. Oh, no. I'm not done yet, sorry. My pages are jumping around. I wasn't finished with that. That kind of goes back to something I did mention earlier, and that is about that excessive need for attention aspect of like narcissistic traits. That's kind of where that would fall in. So sometimes people will do this, you know, they'll act like they know the future because they feel that that makes them special. And I think sometimes there's even like a pressure in this world to, instead of, you know, again, I'm kind of referring to like people who do psychic stuff because they get it. But sticking with animal communication, I just think people know what I'm talking about, maybe more if they're familiar with when they've seen psychics. But when we're talking about animal communication, again, hopefully we're not doing that as animal communicators, but needing to be the center of attention is a big part of that. So when you can't sort of just let that go and say, I don't necessarily need to know the future, I can tell you intuitively what I'm picking up. And just ask yourself, is this person speaking genuinely? Are they telling you what you want to hear? So that would be a big problem if they're telling you something because it just sounds like, you know, what they think that you want the future to be. Because sometimes as an animal communicator, the truth is really hard to tell people. This can be a very difficult field actually to be in because you have to be honest about the information that you're getting. You need to be careful about how you say it sometimes and be kind about it and compassionate, but you do need to be honest, and those can be hard things for people to hear sometimes, but that's what they're coming to you for, and they're paying you for the truth. So but you can test someone's defensiveness. This is something you can do to know what you're dealing with. If you're kind of getting the sense, you know, let me just see. You can ask somebody you don't have to be testing us, but if you ask somebody, if you say to the animal communicator, maybe that doesn't exactly sound like I don't quite understand how that would happen because of X, Y, and Z. Like, say that I said to you, I see you, or I get the feeling that an animal is coming into your life, and I feel like that animal is very well, how about I feel an animal coming into your life in general, and you're like, no, there's no animal. No, we're not getting another animal. We're in a situation right now, we can't afford another animal. We don't live in a place where we could have another animal. But I am saying that to you, and I say, well, my appropriate response would be, that's what I'm getting. And I can elaborate. I can tell you what maybe characteristics or why I'm getting that, what I'm seeing or feeling or thinking is coming, or the animal's thinking that you're getting, even perhaps like they're getting ready to go on to go live with a new person. That can happen. We're picking up stuff on animals that you haven't even met yet. But if I get defensive, then that's a red flag. So keeping that in mind. There should be a conversation, a normal conversation with different, your ability to jump in and ask questions and say, that doesn't quite make sense. Could you elaborate or whatever? Why is it that one of my cats, Pearl, always rubs all over me when I'm listening to one of your lives? Oh, that's so great. Definitely could just be that you're focused and you're focusing in on animals. Animals love that. I shouldn't say love, but they're drawn to it. When we're like the studying that I've been doing, like when I go into that place of really focusing on how to help animals with certain things that I've been reviewing or learning, I find that my animals come to me more. Because they're picking up what you're thinking and feeling all the time. So it's a good energy, and hopefully the show is a good energy and they're picking up on that. So and you can always ask her too. There you go. We were looking to get 4 cats at once. Wow, they found us at the time when they needed someone desperately. Very cool. Very cool. Brave of you to get 4 cats at once. Good for you. So there should be enough of the conversation. Thank you. I hope so, that she likes the sound of my voice. I'm sure I would love Pearl. Yeah, there should be enough of the conversation that just lines up for you. It just feels right and makes sense to you. So make sure a person can acknowledge too if they're, oh, you weren't looking. Very interesting. You weren't looking and they found you. Okay, interesting. If the person can't acknowledge mistakes, so I'm not God, I can't always, know everything. Just like any field, you hope that the person is practicing, good practice, that they've done their learning that they need to do, that they're practicing good. I can't find the term, but they're like, I meditate or I ground myself before every consultation. You want somebody that you get the feeling that when you go into your consultation that they're grounded, that they're not coming in like all hyper and chit-chatty and all over the place. And you can be friendly, but so you'll have a sense of that. So, but however, people do make mistakes. I am not perfect, and to not be able to acknowledge, like if I'm having a consultation and I pick up something and it's not sounding quite right to you, I hope the person's going to speak up. Like I tell people at the start of every consultation, this is your time. You ask questions, you can interrupt me. That's what I'm here to do. And if somebody isn't understanding or it's not making sense, I definitely want them to interrupt me and ask me. A lot of the times it's just that I need to go deeper, that there's some kind of clarification that needs to be done. because I've been doing this a while, and I feel like a lot of the time I'm not making mistakes, but I can't say that I've never made a mistake. But you need somebody who can admit it and not freak out and say, no, I never make mistakes. You're wrong. Excuse me. So the second one, and this is where I was getting to earlier. If somebody says that they can heal your pet, this is the second one in this kind of category of making extraordinary claims. If somebody says that they can heal your pet, okay, so many animal communicators do some kind of energy work, or other thing. I do energy work and I do acupressure massage, and a lot of people have something they do. Not everyone, and they may even make this claim simply about being an animal communicator. It's important to keep that term in perspective. So even if your pet has an amazing change or makes a recovery very quickly, more than likely what's happened is that we've done something, we've used a tool in our toolbox that has supported your pet in some way that helped their body heal itself. So I think it's a very dangerous thing, even if you believe it to be so, that you're convinced, you healed my pet. I am not going to fixate on that, and I'm probably going to try to explain, I'm going to try to help you understand that I don't feel that I healed them. That would, as you've probably already guessed, lend itself to what we've mentioned earlier, that excessive need for admiration. People who will claim that they've healed. And to me, that is, I just think you have to have a certain viewpoint on that. Again, I'm not God, and I can help support you. And I do think that energy work is its own tool, just like tangible things that are used on this by other people in other fields to help people feel better, animals to feel better. I think that there's forms of energy work, just because you can't see the energy necessarily, that do help support healing. But we need to be careful about that and be very mindful if somebody, describes themselves that way. I know that term sometimes gets used loosely. So just be, really, maybe not at first, maybe if you see that on their website, just, read along and, if you want, speak to them, whatever. It may not mean that they're making some insane claim, but, just, take it with a grain of salt, I guess, and make sure you do your research. So, the information is overall too general. So, it's important to understand what animal communicators can and cannot accomplish. Animal communication sometimes can just blow us over in what an animal will say through an animal communicator, what we'll pick up. Sometimes it is amazing. However, and you do need to be able to get the sense that the person is speaking with your pet. So you should get that early on in the conversation, this sense that this is my animal. And I find that happens usually pretty early on. A lot of times what happens if I'm speaking to a pet I've never spoken to before, especially, it starts out almost like a funnel where we're talking about like the bigger picture, the macro animal, sort of the big part of the funnel. And we sort of like warm up. It's like I begin to describe how their animal describes themselves, or something that they do. And then as we proceed with the questions, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower until we're down to like granular issues that people want to talk about in more like detailed terms. So sometimes these things are more specific, so let's say, for instance, a dog shows me them grabbing a dark colored soft toy, and then they show me them going to you and dropping it as you're sitting in a chair, they drop it right on the floor in front of you. And the person says, well, who hears you can do that, I should say, says, because it's not the person. Let me explain. Let me start over. So the person who you're talking to will know this is their pet. But somebody who maybe hears that is going to say, perhaps, that's very general. You know, a dog goes and gets their toy and drops it in front of their person. Wow, animal communicator. That's really impressive. But I can tell you that I've had 3 dogs in my life, and not one of those dogs has ever gone over, grabbed a soft, dark-colored toy, and brought it to me sitting down and dropped it in front of me. So you see how it is actually kind of specific? I mean, yes, there's like memes and pictures of dogs dropping toys in front of their people, but not all dogs do that. So you have to be able to just say, you know, is that specific enough for me to feel like and think that that's my pet? And I think that most people are able to do that. You know, most people that I talk with can see that, you know, when it's their animal. So you do have to be sort of open-minded and not testing the animal communicator. And I don't find most people do, because why would you spend the money on me to come and test me? That's a waste of your money. And I'm not there to do that. And it's going to create a bad energy flow, actually. I find that when people are very closed off and critical, that it blocks the flow of energy. And animal communication is a form of energy work. And it doesn't bode well. So I don't recommend you do that with your money. If you don't believe in it and don't want to understand it or be open to it, don't waste your money. But you should feel like the person is talking to your pet through the course of the session. And if they're not, please speak up and say something. If it's me, I want you to. And that's the thing. You want an animal communicator who's going to be willing to hear that and say, okay, maybe I'm even picking up on another animal in the home, or an animal that used to live there, or somebody else in your life who has a pet, their pet. Okay, so another example would be like you're, talking to someone and you say that their cat has a voracious appetite, and he's talking about how they're just hungry, and they want to eat all the time. Well, if you have cats, you know that sometimes they can be very picky. A lot of cats can be very picky. Or that she or he likes to hang out in water, like my Gia. That's Gia, by the way. I don't know if you can tell that's a cat right there. It's kind of like, that's Giovanna. She's kind of sunk in and dark in that, but she's like that. She loves to hang out with water. And if I went to an animal communicator for whatever reason and they said, I'm really getting like she loves water, like she's showing me like batting at water, and I just feel water around her, I would be like, yeah, that's her. That's because not a lot of cats do that. Excuse me. So, some people, though, are stronger with different issues or different areas of animal communication. Some people are better with relationships. Some people are better with medical intuitive work. Some of us speak more from the knowing place, the feeling place, as opposed to the visual. These are it's just people work different ways. So that doesn't mean that they're wrong, though, just because they work in a different way and describe things differently or have certain areas that they're better at. But keep in mind, this is going back to this whole issue of you want people who their sense of self is not going to be, they're not going to get threatened. They don't have this grandiosity, like I'm the best and you can't ask me a question. And, if you say to me that you're not sure that's my pet, I'm going to be willing to work and see how do we make sure we've got your pet in the session. So, also, okay, the another topic I want to talk about is fishing. So I actually hadn't included part of this in my original, when I was outlining this. I had asked my husband what he thought, was I missing anything? Was I not thinking of anything? Had I missed something? And he said, well, of course, just, making sure people are wary of fishing. Like, social media. And I hadn't really thought about it because for me, I actually don't want to know anything about people when I do their first session, especially. Of course, if they're repeat clients, I'm going to know something. I'm going to know some things about them. But it changes a little bit. When you've got that trust and you've got that relationship, things kind of flow a little differently, I have to say. The initial session, I like just to not know anything. That's just me. I know a lot of the communicators that I have trained with, and that's how we were taught. Like, try not to get a lot of information. And so that doesn't even, that's why I think it didn't cross my mind, because I don't want to know that. When I send out my forms, when people purchase a session from me, I send a person a form and I ask them for very brief information, like give me 1 or 2 questions, up to 3 questions, depending on the length of the session, that you want to focus on. What's like the primary issue? Please put it in very short terms, what it is. I don't want a story. I just want to know, like, for purposes of focusing and not wasting time, I want to be able to get right in there and say, okay, this is what we're going for. So I guess people do that, though. I mean, of course they do. There's, we've seen people get caught doing things like that, going and finding people's information on the internet. Okay, so I don't think that there's a lot of animal communicators who would do this, hopefully, but I think that it's out there, so you need to be aware of it. It could happen. So how would you know that they're doing that? I guess, you might not want to, I guess, like, I have a Facebook business page. I don't do a ton on Facebook anymore. I don't know. It hasn't been the thing for me. But if somebody likes my page, we're not friends personally, and therefore, it's not like I'm going to, like, you might not want to make friends with them, for instance, maybe, because then they might click to link to you as a friend. They might see something accidentally. I don't know. It depends on how social media works, or Instagram. I don't know. But that's a tough thing, but you probably just will, as a human, begin to pick up on that. Just your gut will tell you they're bringing things up. Maybe you'll remember a picture or something and be like, that's the main picture on my Facebook page, that we were at this fair last week and they were talking about the clown in the back. I don't know. So, that's just something that could be out there. But part of this, though, when it comes to that, is it's sort of a subsection of that, but not doing with social media. So pulling info from you. And this is my final one. So one of the reasons that I started to do animal communications here, live on here, was to show the world that animal communicators can know things and, sort of to prove my abilities. It was to help people understand what this is, to help people understand that animals have thoughts and feelings. I think it's a world that not enough people understand or know about. It's gaining some traction, but it still isn't, like, I don't think people totally get it all the time. So I think this is a good way to teach people about it. And also I do other things on here too, like the acupressure and massage. So, but I don't think that this is like a woo-woo thing, as I mentioned. I think everybody can do it if they want to, and they, some have maybe more of the ability naturally than others, like anything. But if you work at most things, you can, if you really want to really put your time to it, you can. So somebody who's pulling information from you during a consultation, that would be like, so I should have put a solid example for myself. I'm trying to think of something solid. I'm having trouble, but basically, when it's if you're aware, when it's happening, because they're kind of asking you questions more than they're giving you information. So you don't want somebody who's like going through a list of questions about your life and their life before they get into the animal communication. That sometimes when you're speaking with someone's pet, you do need to it is a conversation, so keep that in mind. This is not like a tarot card reading. It's a conversation where energy is flowing back and forth, and it has to keep moving forward. So if I give you information that I'm getting from the pet about something that you asked me, now what? Like, now, okay, so next. So I might say to you, so what else do you want to know? Or, you know, I might say, like, did you go on a trip last year? Because I'm seeing your pet sitting on a train or something like that. And, you know, you get a sense, I think, or would get a sense if someone was trying to elicit information from you rather than it's just part of the conversation. Like sometimes you just speak like that, you know. I try to be careful not to put things in the form of a question for that reason, but I'm a person and, you know, it's just natural talk sometimes. So just be aware that they're not trying to like pull information during the conversation as opposed to giving you information. So I, you know, really don't, you know, have much else except to say that please just keep in mind that this is all about the animals. The whole purpose of me doing this is because you know, I want people to understand that animal communication is a real thing, that animals have thoughts, they have feelings, and to acknowledge that and not to question yourself or doubt yourself if you've had times where you have felt like you do understand what your animal's thinking and feeling. But also to, you know, just give you an opportunity to maybe, if you're thinking about for the first time hiring an animal communicator, have a resource to be able to say, okay, these are just the things I need to think about. I also think that it's an interesting topic. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so I like talking about psychology topics too. I'd probably do another channel on that if I had the time, but unfortunately it's not going that way in life for me to do that. But I think a lot of people who come to my channel came from like true crime. It's a whole other long story, but you know, just connections through being on other people's shows and friends coming on this show. So I think people on here, I know people on here are interested in those things because they've said so in the chat. So I want to keep this show also, you know, the topics to be what people are interested in. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it too, because, you know, narcissism comes into play, you know, sometimes when we talk about even things like true crime, and, you know, people are interested in that stuff a lot. So I try to keep it interesting, and I'm not one-dimensional. So if you have topics that you'd like to hear more about, please let me know. I do, for the next day or two, this weekend I have a nice discount offer. You'll see it in the description below if you want to check it out. And at some point, I'm probably going to put this into an ebook or some kind of printed format. So not anytime soon, but if you're watching this down the line and you know, check the description if you want to see it in print, it might be there. And let us know in the chat if you have ever run into anyone, any situation like this where you know, weren't sure. I hope that this helps. I hope it helps you with discernment. And, you know, also, I just want to thank everybody who's here today. It's kind of it's a Memorial Day weekend, so I had to move this from Thursday to Saturday because I wasn't feeling well on Thursday. So here we are. And it's kind of nice to do it in the afternoon too, a little bit more energy. So thank you everybody who's here, and it's so good to see everybody back. I'm glad to be here, and you know, have a good rest of your weekend.